It is my pleasure now to introduce the symposium's first panel discussion, entitled Increasing Black Enrollment in Law Schools. It will be chaired by Deans Patty Roberts of St. Mary's University School of Law and Jack Nowlin of Texas Tech University School of Law.
Good morning. I'm Jack Nowlin, Dean of the Texas Tech University School of Law. Welcome to this panel on increasing Black enrollment in law school. We all know Black lawyers matter for so many reasons, which have been stated so eloquently already today. We need more Black lawyers as a matter of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to help build a better and more socially just world for us all. And there are so many things important to progress here: mentoring, job placement, bar passage, graduation rates, academic success, and recruiting and enrollment. And today, this panel will talk about the last of these, increasing Black enrollment in law schools, how we can provide more opportunities to allow more potential Black lawyers to start down the path to attending law school, with a special emphasis on pipeline programs. Each of our panelists will speak for about 10 minutes, and then we will have some Q&A. And I have to say, we have a truly wonderful group of panelists for you this morning. My co-moderator, Dean Patricia Roberts of St. Mary's University School of Law, will provide brief introductions for each panelist before they speak. And I will now hand things off to Dean Roberts. Thank you.
Dean Roberts, I think you're muted.
Well, may I be the first and last person to not unmute herself during this conference. I want to thank you, Dean Nowlin, and also thank Dean Baines and Dean Collins for their inclusiveness in asking all of the Texas deans to be part of this conference, and also just their vision in holding this conference. It's truly extraordinary what you've put together here. Thank you, Congresswoman Jackson Lee, for your comments. I'm very proud to be a new dean of St. Mary's School of Law, where we have the second highest Hispanic student population nationally, with 50% of our students Hispanic Americans. It's that kind of pipeline that we need across the country, and our panelists are going to talk about some truly inspirational programs. James B. O'Neill is our first panelist. He is the co-founder and executive director of Legal Outreach, Inc., a law pipeline to diversity nonprofit, which he established immediately upon graduating from Harvard Law School and after his selection as the first recipient of the Harvard Fellowship in Public Interest Law. Mr. O'Neill has received numerous national and state awards for his work, including an honorary degree from CUNY Law School, recognizing his exemplary approach to integrating law and education. Mr. O'Neill.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Dean Roberts, and good morning, everyone. And many thanks to all of you for joining. This is such an important panel. My hope is that we can provide some insight as to what steps can be taken in order to increase the number of Black and other students of color in law school and eventually into the profession. So I'm happy to share with you Legal Outreach's approach to expanding the pipeline for Black students and other students of color. So we describe ourselves as not only a pipeline to diversity nonprofit, but also a college prep nonprofit. We work at the high school level. Our primary objective is to do our part to level the educational and professional playing field for underserved minority youth by closing the outlook gap, the achievement gap, and the college matching gap, all three of which can literally prevent students of color from having a realistic and legitimate shot at acquiring their fair share of the American dream. So as a backdrop to our work, I'll need to provide you with some stats about the state of secondary education in New York City. First, you should be aware that only 77% of New York City's high school students graduate from high school. And those are numbers that have risen significantly over the last several years. Yet when you break that number down by race and ethnicity, The story is even sadder. The graduation rate for Black students is 11% lower than white students and 15% lower than Asian American students. On top of that, studies have shown that less than 20% of Black and Latinx students are graduating from high school college ready. With those types of figures, we knew back in the 90s that in order to become a true pipeline organization, we had to expand our mission beyond simple exposure of students to the profession to actually preparing them for the world of higher education. Next slide, please, slide 2. Our desire was to work with students from their freshman all the way through their senior year, and to operate a program that mirrored the makeup of the New York City public schools. And as you can see, are we at slide 2? Can we see that?
Yes,
Okay.
we've got slide 2 up. Should I put the next slide up?
No, that's fine. I just don't see it from my screen, but that's great. So our desire was to operate a program that mirrored the makeup of the New York City public schools. And as you see from slide 3, if you can show that, the ethnic and racial breakdown for us is 52% Black, 22% Hispanic or Latinx, 17% South Asian or Asian, and about 9% white and other. So to accomplish our mission, though, we adopted a 3-pronged approach. The next slide, slide 4, please. The first prong was designed to provide our students with a vision for the future. The second prong was established to help them develop the essential academic skills that would allow them not only to matriculate to college, but be prepared to compete and succeed upon arrival. And the third prong sought to surround them with a variety of supports throughout their 4 years of high school. Next slide, please. So the first prong of our mission, vision and exposure, was developed to help students believe that becoming a lawyer is not an impossible goal or a career choice that is beyond their reach. Each year, we entice 144 rising ninth graders to join a 5-week summer program at 6 law schools where they are immersed in the law and treated like law students and lawyers. This 5-week program, known as the Summer Law Institute, has 4 major components. There's a criminal justice curriculum, which is so relevant at this time. There's a guest speaker series where we're bringing in lawyers from all different walks of life and fields to talk to the kids about how they got into the profession and the work that they do. There's a mock trial competition, which helps really kids to believe that they can become lawyers. And then there are field trips to various law firms and courts and other organizations. Upon completing the program, the SLI participants are invited to apply to our 4-year college-bound program, which is comprised of 12 different components, which students participate in over the course of the 4 years. 60 to 70 students are accepted each year. Next slide, slide 6, please. These students participate in a number of what we call additional, but they really are core educational programs. Each is designed to keep students interested. Actually, each is designed to keep students interested in legal and other professional careers as well, even as we're working with them concomitantly to develop and build their academic skills. So the additional law-related education programs include a constitutional law debate modeled very much on the moot court competitions that we all participated in law school. There's a mentoring program where each of our students is assigned to an attorney who works with them over the course of their sophomore through their senior year. And then there's a summer internship program, which we do in conjunction with about 50 law firms, governmental organizations, and public interest organizations. Slide 7. If you look at this list, it's an impressive list of law firms and other organizations that have committed to working with us to increase the number of minority students that would have the possibility of going to law school one day. Yet, equally, if not more important than our success with exposure, is the second prong of our approach, which is our focus on building and enhancing our students' academic skills. Slide 8, please. You'll see that there are several programs that we do year in and year out that were specifically designed for this purpose. They include academic advising, which is required for any student in our program who has less than an 85 average. There's a writing program that takes place on Saturdays. The first year is devoted to grammar, the second year to essay writing, the third year to persuasive writing, and the fourth year they do a major research and writing project. There's an SAT prep program for our students that goes for 5 weeks, where the average increase is about 130 points. And then there's a college philosophy class they take in order to see what college level work is all about. The educational programs I just described require tremendous commitment of time and effort from our students beyond what's required at their high schools. Keeping track of the students and what they're doing without support programs, however, would be almost impossible to achieve. So if you look at slide 9, there are a number of support programs that we offer our students as well. There are life skills workshops that they do every year throughout our program. There are parent support workshops. Once they become seniors, we work with them individually in small groups on college access and financial aid. And even before they actually matriculate to college, we actually work with them on how to navigate the environment on an academic, social, and emotional level. If you go to slide 10, you'll see some of the results that we've been able to achieve. Again, you'll see with SAT scores that our students on average have scored 1265 or above. And this is looking really at the class of 2020, but it is actually very similar to what happens each and every year. If you look at slide 11, the college matriculation rate for our kids is really like 99% all colleges, but 98% for four-year colleges. But even more impressive is that 60% of our students have actually matriculated to the nation's most and highly competitive colleges based upon Barron's top 2 tiers. The results, if you look at this, is that that our students actually do extremely well, comparatively speaking, to their peers at their high schools and really their peers across the nation. But the great news is this: if you look at slide 13, this shows you the list of selective colleges that our kids have matriculated to. We've had multiple graduates over the years to actually attend all the Ivies, as well as other top colleges such as NYU, Georgetown, Duke, Emory, UVA, U Rochester. The list also includes your top 25 liberal arts colleges such as Williams, Amherst, Swarthmore, Wellesley, Wesleyan, Hamilton, Smith, so forth and so on. Slide 14, you'll see that a fairly significant number have continued their educations at the graduate school level. About 10% of our students have matriculated to law school, and others have attended a variety of other graduate schools. So in conclusion, let me just say that our success is a result of a comprehensive approach by addressing the outlook, academic, and support deficits in the lives of our students, while simultaneously pushing them to fulfill their potential. We've managed to open the doors to elite and selective colleges for over 800 participants who were raised in some of New York City's most underserved communities. Our students will tell you that their success is due first and foremost to their own hard work, discipline, and dedication. But they will be quick to tell you that legal outreach's intervention in their lives at an early age, on a continuous basis, and over a protracted period of time, that is the 4 years of high school, was absolutely critical to their success. If anybody would like to learn more about our programs, you'll see slide 15. Tamika Edwards, who's our Managing Director of Partnerships, would be happy to speak with any of you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. That is truly an incredible program. What amazing results you have. And I know people have questions. Our next panelist is Bill Weaver. He served in the U.S. Army Signals Intelligence Corps for 8 years in Berlin and Augsburg, Germany. He subsequently received his law degree and PhD in politics from the University of Virginia, where he was on the editorial board of the Virginia Law Review. He's presently director of the Patty and Paul Yetter Center for Law at the University of Texas at El Paso. And Professor Weaver teaches the tort session during phase 1 of the Law School Preparation Institute College Summer Program that he'll tell us about today. Professor Weaver's research focuses on executive branch secrecy policy, government abuse, and law and bureaucracy. Professor Weaver?
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. The greatest disparity suffered by any ethnic minority group as representation in law school is suffered by Mexican Americans. Where you'd expect to find 100 African Americans in law school, you find about 40. So there's about a 60% disparity, depending on what year you look at, with respect to African American representation in law school. Where you'd expect to find 100 Mexican Americans in law school, you find 12. So there's about 88% disparity of Mexican American representation in law school. As far as I can tell, that's the greatest disparity of representation attached to any particular ethnic group. So at the University of Texas at El Paso, our student population is about 90% Mexican American or Mexican. We live right on the border, and we do have about 10 to 12% of our students that come from Mexico and attend our university. So given that disparity and the fact that the vast majority of our students are indeed Mexican American, we set about trying to resolve this disparity with respect to law school. So the Law School Preparation Institute, which we founded in 1998, is a multidimensional program that is designed to cure some of these ills that we see reflected in law school attendance. First and foremost, it spans 2 summers. So we have a full year at least with students, and we don't let them go once they apply to the Institute and are accepted. And those 2 summers have 2 different segments. The first summer, the students are exposed to a month-long session of tort law, as you would find in the first year tort session in law school. I teach that part of it. We use a law school text, and it's highly intensive. It's 8 hours a day with lots of homework. The idea is to get people to learn how to read cases in fluency. Law looks like it's English, and I think a lot of people will tell you when you get to law school, it doesn't appear to be the English that you're used to. So the idea is to immerse students into reading law and beginning to understand how to interpret law in cases and to diarize them and to understand where the cases are going. This is a very important skill that usually takes some period of time when you get to law school to acquire. So we want our students to have that skill before they get there. Writing, all you got as an attorney are words. You don't have anything else. And so you have to become a master of language. So writing is another component that we spend a lot of time on in the first year as well. And then we don't let the students go throughout that last year in school, generally speaking, that the students are in. And so we keep tabs of them with writing assignments, case readings weekly. We grill them. It's a full-time operation in the summer for the students, and it's a part-time operation in the fall and spring of their final year. But when they get into that last summer, the focus is almost exclusively on the law school admissions test, which has a disproportionate effect on your capacity to gain admittance to law schools. Where, you know, I've already pointed out that there's a huge disparity in law schools with respect to race and ethnicity. A lot of that is due to the law school admissions test. It is operates in many cases as a complete bar to admission to a large number of schools. And there is a close correlation between ethnicity and ability to score well on the examination. So you're almost compelled to undertake some serious preparation for the LSAT in order to do well and get into a law school. As I said, it can operate as a complete bar. Your record can be a perfect record in many respects, But if you don't have the LSAT score, you're not going to get in. So given that environment, we're looking to cure the kinds of ills that afflict minorities because of the kinds of things and the way things are tested and get you into law school. I think that another aspect that is sometimes ignored is that when you apply to law school, you should have an absolutely flawless application. You can't make mistakes. You have to make sure that everything is perfect, that it looks good. I mean, nowadays when, applications are done online, a lot of that is taken care of right away. But the application, take great care with how you fill it out. Take great care with what you say. Spend your words like they're money, right? That be economical with your language. Get right to the point. Show them that you can write well. The only thing you have, again, as an attorney are words, right? So make sure that they understand and that the application conveys that you have thought about things and you are careful. You spend words like you spend your money carefully. So, language is incredibly important, and have other people look at your applications and look at your personal statement, as many as possible, to get feedback, to see if you are using your professors, writing instructors. Make sure you get people that live through words to look at what you have to say and look at the record that you're presenting to law school. That's all you've got. And make sure that it's flawless, no errors in it involved whatsoever. In my program, this is a lot of what we spend our time doing. And also, I would say people make a lot of mistakes about applying to law school. They only do it once, generally speaking. Hopefully, they'll only have to do it once. And so therefore, since you do it once, you can make a lot of mistakes. So I would also encourage you to give your application not to lawyers, practicing lawyers. Please don't do that. And the reason is because they have all kinds of opinions, but they've only done it once too, right? Give your application to people who do this for a living. Your pre-law advisor, seek that person out at the university, or people that have great experience in helping students through applications. It may not just be the pre-law advisor. And make sure it's a flawless, that's your first case, right? Is your application to law school. Is you're making a case for yourself, right? You're arguing on behalf of a client, and the client is you. So make sure that it puts the best possible face on things, and be honest. Don't embellish. Don't say things that stretch the truth, that aren't true. Be straight, direct, be economical words. Spend them like you would spend your money, your words. Every word takes up a space, right? So these are just some of the general things that I would advise you to do. And I'm also happy to say this, and I understand what I get into sometimes, but my team and I, we're happy to look at things like your personal statement. You can send it to us. We're experts at it. We will spend the time to go through it. I know there are quite a few out there, but that's perfectly fine. It's as we're dedicated to this full time. We're very lucky to be at a university that is supporting our activities, our center full time, which is very unusual, and we're extremely grateful for that.
Thank you so much, Professor Weaver. That was great advice and a really generous offer to look at applications. I love spend your words like you spend your money. I think a lot of attorneys could use that advice, at least myself. Our next panelist is Rebecca Rupert McMahon, the Chief Executive Officer for the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association. She's responsible for the day-to-day operations and resources of the nearly 5,000 member professional association, as well as its charitable arm, the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Foundation. The Bar Association provides voluntary workforce development for the next generation of lawyers through a series of pipeline programs that span freshman year of high school through law school. Becky is a 1989 graduate of Smith College and a 1993 graduate of The Ohio State University Moritz College of Law.
Thank you, and it's such a pleasure to be here today. We are so excited from Cleveland to be able to talk a little bit south of the border about some things that have been going on for the last 20 plus years here in Cleveland. Our engagement in pipeline programs really stems from a single-minded commitment to be intentionally and consciously inclusive. The city of Cleveland, for those that don't know, inside the city limits, we have a population of nearly 400,000 people. About 50% of that population is African American. We also have an immediate city next door, East Cleveland, which is approximately 95% African American. When we look at the schools, in particular the high school districts that serve those two different communities, they are respectively 65% in Cleveland, African-American students, and in East Cleveland, almost 99%. When we look at Greater Cleveland's legal community, and it is an incredibly well-developed, rich legal community, and as someone who used to practice law here in Cleveland before I came to the Bar Association, I can say it's an extensive legal community. But when we look at what representation of people of color look like inside of our community, the numbers are disappointing. And they are increasing and getting better, but it is incredibly slow. In a landmark survey that we did 5 years ago through the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association, we learned that just 4% of the partners in Cleveland law firms are people of color, and just 8% are associates. When we look at chief legal officers, just 25% are people of color, and the numbers go down from there. We're in the process of repeating that survey right now, and so we'll see what, if any, improvement has occurred in the last 5 years. So we know to drive genuine inclusion and equity within our profession, we have to start early, and that's where our pipeline programs come in. So if you could please, let me see, are the slides up?
Yes,
There
they
we
are.
go. Great, thank you so much. All right, so as you heard in the opening, and as the slide indicates, we have a series of 6 pipeline programs that fall under our community program arm, and they reach from high school through law school. They were founded on this commitment to intentionally advancing inclusion, and the funding for these programs comes through a combination of resources provided by the Bar Association, our captive foundation, and then third-party sponsors. But let me just say, as the next slide shows, the most important sponsor that we get is a series of community partners. And this is just an example of some of the partners. This is not a complete list. It's maybe about 1/3 of the organizations that on an annual basis are playing some role in helping us launch our diversity programs. Next slide, please. So to begin with, we have 3 programs that are really focused on the high school entry level, and that's the first opportunity for us to really get engaged. The first of those are 2 different mock trial programs. As you see on the next slide, one of the programs that we're engaged in through the Bar Association is a statewide mock trial program. Could you please advance the slide? There we go, the Ohio mock trial program. So that's one that encounters 3,000 students across the state. And in Cleveland here, we have between, on an annual basis, 500 and 600 students who participate. We spend in staff resources and direct expenses approximately $20,000 to run this program. And it is essential that we deploy the resources of hundreds of volunteers throughout our community, the vast majority of whom come through our Bar Association membership. But again, we have partners. The program is administered out of Columbus by the Ohio Center for Law-Related Education, but a critical partner are our courts, the municipal court, our trial level common pleas courts, our probate and domestic relations courts. They turn over their courtrooms to us, and we get our kids inside those courtrooms on an annual basis to do an initial round of argument in January, followed by 2 or 3 different series of competitions thereafter. As you see on the next slide, our second program that we run is the Cleveland Mock Trial. So this program was founded in the late 1990s when we learned that there was an incredible disparity between the Ohio program and the local program. There were a number of students and schools that were not participating in the statewide program because frankly, they couldn't afford the expenses that are associated with the statewide program. And so our Bar Association built a program that is entirely free to any school and any student who is a member of the Cleveland Metropolitan or the East Cleveland City High Schools, who wants to participate but does not participate in the statewide competition. And through an incredible partnership with our municipal court, what we have built is a program where in the spring, this happens after the Ohio mock trial, students participate, and the case that we build is one that comes right out of current headline stories. So in years past, we've focused on the opioid crisis, digital hacking, police encounters, and as the next slide shows, most recently a year ago, we featured the trial of Fred Evans, who was accused of playing an instrumental role in starting the Glenville riot here in Cleveland, which was a significant event in one of the communities that we serve by our programs. So beyond the mock trial programs, you'll see on the next slide, our other high school engagement that we have with students is through a program called the 3 Rs, Rights, Realities, Responsibilities. Next slide, please. There we go. So founded in 2005, this program engages more than 400 volunteers a year. We go into the 11th grade classrooms where we are teaching students 2 different things. One, government and civics and what the intersection of law is in those. And then secondarily, we are focused on college development. We are focused on career development. And yes, we talk about what's happening in the legal profession. It's all right, you can go back to the next slide, please. And as you can see from the metrics on the slide, we have more than 2,300 volunteers that have engaged with us in the 15 years that this program has existed. And there are a number of different success metrics, not the least of which is just last year, the Cleveland Metropolitan School District examined what's happening with test scores, and we see dramatic rise in those schools and those high schools where our 3 Rs teams of volunteers go into the schools. Next slide, please. Our supporters include, among others, our federal courts. And as you can see, Judge Dan Polster is one who has been with us from the beginning, who sees that what's happening with our schools is inextricably tied to the future success of our community. The next slide shows another graduate of a series of our programs, including the 3 Rs program, a young woman who is now a practicing lawyer in Georgia, who said that the 3 Rs experience was transformative for her. Next slide, please. Another program that we have in our high school pipeline is the Stephanie Tubbs Summer Legal Academy. Like James, this is a summertime program. It's a 3-week intensive on our 2 local law schools campuses. They alternate from year to year, where students are getting a direct law school experience for a period of 3 weeks. And then they have the opportunity to take on a 4-week part-time internship that is paid with local legal employers, where they learn about our court system, the criminal justice process, and more. Next slide, please. Typically, we see 16 students that come into this program, and each one is assigned a specific mentor who really develops a personal relationship. Beyond the Summer Legal Academy, next slide, please. These are some student reviews. Beyond our Summer Legal Academy, the transition into college is our Stokes Scholars Program. And as you'll see on the next slide, this is the program that for us was a missing link until 2012. What we were finding was that we were doing an incredible job building relationships early and often in the high schools, but we were missing the college participation piece. And so through the Stokes Scholars, what we do is we provide students in a competitive program the opportunity to get engaged in a summertime paid internship program that happens inside local legal employers. As the slide on the screen shows, since 2012, we've had 80 unique scholars who have completed our Stokes Scholars Program for at least 1 summer. Students are able to participate for more than 1 summer. Some do it as many as 4 summers. Others do it just for 1. What the data tells us is significant things happen as a result of the personal, intensive opportunity these students get between their employers, as well as their opportunities to meet one another. 93% of our participants were first-generation college students. 95% have been on track or have completed college in less than 5 years. Of our 80 participants thus far, 23 are currently in undergrad. 40 have already graduated, and the exciting number in our community is that 14 have been admitted to law school. Of those 14 that have been admitted to law school, 4 are currently in law school, 7 have graduated, and 4 have passed the bar exam, 3 of whom are practicing here in Cleveland. So these programs work with a very intentional and very intensive opportunity. From our college-based program, we then round out our pipeline programs with a law school program, as you'll see on the next slides, which is a minority clerkship program. This was our earliest flagship pipeline program created. You can advance to the next series of slides. There we go. Into one more slide, please. The minority clerkship program is one that is open to all 1L students of color from any accredited law school, although preference is given to local law students. And what these students have an opportunity to do is, again, receive a paid program, a paid clerkship with local employers. We created this program back in 1999 when, frankly, law firms and other legal employers were not yet in the habit of creating intentional opportunities of students of color. So our clerkship program created that opportunity. In 2019, just a year ago, 5 of the 13 clerkships that were awarded came from our Stokes alumni program, the college-based program, and more than half had met us in our high school programs. So what we see in Cleveland, next slide please, is really a tremendous opportunity from high school through college and into law school to support the next generation of professionals who are developing. And as the last slide in my deck shows, there are a few key takeaways that we have identified through our programs. If you could please advance the slides. One slide back, please, if you could. So the key is to start early into high school. Waiting until law school is too late. College is important for sure, but starting that opening of opportunities in high school is imperative. Relationships are everything. Staying close and connected to our students and our volunteers are essential. And then most importantly, creating plenty of space for the students to become their own best supporters, sounding boards, and cheerleaders. And then of course, last but not least, authenticity is everything. The volunteers, the staff who engage, the employers who bring these students are as committed as anyone to seeing these students succeed. And that's one of the pieces that students recognize from the earliest of days. So I'm glad to share any of this. I welcome, as my last slide shows, through either our website or I welcome you reaching out directly. We share our curriculum, we share all of our programming, and we share insights both in terms of what has been successful as well as what has been less successful.
Thank you so much. That's really a wide variety of programs you're offering with exceptional results and a robust partnership and volunteer base. So thank you. Next, we have Michael Meyerson, who is the DLA Piper Professor of Law at the University of Baltimore School of Law. He's also the director and co-founder of the award-winning Fannie Angelos Program for Academic Excellence, which has built a unique collaboration between the University of Baltimore School of Law and Maryland's 4 historically Black colleges and universities. He's the author of numerous law review articles and several books focused on con law, contracts law, religious freedom, and the First Amendment. He's a graduate of Hampshire College and the University of Pennsylvania School of Law.
Thank you, Dean Roberts, very much. And I also want to thank my panelists. They are both inspirational, but also incredibly informative. I am stealing a lot of their ideas and I'm going to claim them as my own. What I'd like to do is talk a little about the program and fill you in on what we do and what we think can be replicated. Okay, so the Fannie Angelos program has been around about 20 years. As you were told, it is a collaboration between the University of Baltimore Law School and Maryland's 4 historically Black colleges and universities. The reason this program began was because the dean of our law school in the mid-90s asked me and a colleague of mine, Professor Michael Higginbotham, to review the constitutionality of our affirmative action program, which was then being challenged in the 4th Circuit. And our program was both constitutional and not very impressive. It didn't do very much. So the question was, could we design a program that was not only effective, but was Supreme Court proof, an issue that may be relevant in the years to come? So we designed a program that is both race neutral and merit based. But at the same time, because we are working with the HBCUs, is predominantly African-American in the people we get. Now, we get all races. We have a lot of people from a lot of different groupings, but about 95% of our students are indeed going to be Black lawyers. I think you're supposed to begin by saying we've done some good things. We won the ABA award in 2017 for diversity leadership. Like the other programs, we have our successes. More than 100 students have been accepted at law school. And even more importantly, the goal was never to get them into law school. The goal was to take over the law school once they got in. And our students have graduated at the top of their classes, gotten all the awards. But even more exciting for me are the students that are struggling and then end up in the middle of the class. The ones who begin at the bottom and claw their way up through their own hard work and the support they receive. One of my favorite statistics was summer 2019, where our students not only beat the UB Law School pass rate for the bar, we beat the state rate as well, which I think is a testament again to the students we have. Some of the other statistics I want to share with you is the growth a good program, an intensive program can do. This is the leap in percentile from the very first exam, LSAT practice, to their actual final score. And what you see is the students are getting bad scores, not because they're not smart, but because they're so unaccustomed to the game. The LSAT is perhaps the most culturally biased exam in America, in my opinion. If you look at the games section, unless you are a math nerd like I was, you've never seen these games. You must learn to use programs to learn how to do this. It's not the SAT. It is, and nor is it law. It is so specific that unless students are guided, even the smartest students will not do well enough to get into law school. Second, what we've also found, and this is one of the themes of a lot of the panelists today, is that it's never just one part of a program. It's not just a pipeline, it's a relay race. You take them where you start and you hand them off. So once they're in law school, now in our program, as I'll discuss, they can go to any law school. The ones who come to UB, though, we can take better care of. And what I like about the next study is that you look at LSAT scores and you can predict where someone will finish in the class. Not bad prediction, but it's not fate. And so if you give support, if you help people grow, as you'll see, they will far exceed what their LSAT scores predict for their success. So like the other programs you've heard, and I think this is one of the themes for those who are thinking of starting programs, they're all multifaceted. There's not one tool that you use. You need the entire tool chest. So I want to talk about each of these components and how they work. We started originally with the Angelos Scholars. Now, these are essentially from the 8 HBCUs we select after an interview process that every year has gotten better and more intensive. We select 8 Angelos Scholars, usually juniors or seniors. Before COVID, we put them up for a 2-week boot camp, the first 2 weeks of the law school's semester, and they stay in a hotel. We feed them and we put them in a bubble of law. And as you've heard, one of the biggest jobs any program like mine or any of the other programs you've heard has is to expand imagination. You have to show people who have never met a lawyer and only seen Black lawyers on TV being criminal lawyers, that there's a world out there that's open to them and for them. So they first of all have to know they can survive in law school. So they attend our classes, they meet law professors, they're doing writing, and we are editing their writing like they are 1Ls, which means we're tearing them to shreds. Next, they meet lawyers, they meet judges, they meet other students, and they realize they belong. They then go back to their campuses to take an LSAT course. And if they can get a 152 on the LSAT, they have a 3.5 GPA. They don't have to go to the law school, but if they do, they get a free ride, full tuition. We also have 12 other students, and they're not going to be scholars. They don't get a scholarship, but they take the same course. And more importantly, they get the same support. Now, they're not guaranteed a free ride, but the world works. The higher their score, the higher the amount of money they get. Once in law school, both during the LSAT program and after, we meet with them regularly. The first thing we learned as we learned how to do the program was that it's not merely an academic exercise. You have to support them in every way. So we meet with them regularly. I wasn't going to lose them, so I make them text me. Now that we're in Zoom world, I can Zoom with them weekly or thereabouts, and I can see how they are doing and all the outside forces that are threatening to derail them. Once in law school, this continues. We meet with them frequently, and we're teaching the soft skills many of them have never learned: time management, outlining, and importantly, how to talk to professors, how to go and learn and do the things that those whose parents went to law school have taught them, how to be self-protective, how to be assertive in protecting their rights. We have to work with them on an acclimation project as they go from an HBCU to a predominantly white institution. And with our LSAT and law students, we have learned that it is a universe of issues to talk about: health, family, finances, and psychology. We fight the toxic voices that tell them they don't belong. Those voices can come from the media, from their friends, horribly from their families, and they need another voice to tell them, you know, you're really smart and you are, you can make this, you belong here, you deserve this. Once they graduate, you can't let them go. I tell them it's sort of like being in the mob. You're in it for life. So we work on interviewing. Networking is critically important. And then once they get a job, it's almost always a predominantly white firm, if they're in a firm, or a predominantly white office, even in Baltimore. So we teach them the survival skills inside the job, and then we give them advice as they go on, their promotions, transferring, how they move their career along. One of the only things we require of them other than effort is the moral imperative of paying it forward. We stress the importance of community, and every student who is watching this, I want to tell you, you have a moral obligation. For every step you take forward, you look behind you, who needs that hand, and you help them. That is the way, one of the ways we succeed. We all work for ourselves, and then we make sure we help others. And so there are so many ways, even in COVID land, to bring people together, to have meetings. And so it's not just faculty and staff. Each student helps others. They are responsible for those who are behind them. So why does the program succeed? And first of all, truth in advertising, we don't bat 1,000. And maybe that's one of the cornerstones of our success, is that we know you don't guarantee success. Smart students who should make it don't make it. We keep learning, we keep growing. And that's the other thing. You just have to be committed to improving. And the number one thing a program needs, a pipeline program needs, is to respect the students in your program. They don't need help because they need help. They need help because there's something fundamentally wrong with society. They need help because of structural racism. They need help because they need to show how wonderful they are. When we started this program, we've always said we are not a diversity program. We are a talent search. And the theory has always been, if you are truly open and you find talent and you level the playing field, diversity inevitably happens. To do that, it's not a teach to the test, which is what I originally thought it was. It is a global, holistic, human approach. You learn from your failures as you learn what it takes to succeed. And you want to be grateful. You want to be truly grateful. You have the ability to make society a little fairer. Martin Luther King said, the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends to justice. Those of us who are in law schools or law firms, you have the opportunity to bend that arc just a little in the direction of justice. It is a glorious thing to take opportunities like that and make the world a little better. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Meyerson. You are certainly right that every one of us on this call have a moral imperative to pay it forward. And we heard from all our panelists when we were preparing for this, something you just stated very clearly, that it's not just academics for these programs. It has to be also soft skills and a holistic approach to ensure their success. Our next panelist, our last panelist, is Professor Meredith Duncan. She's on the faculty at the University of Houston Law Center. Her areas of expertise include legal ethics, criminal law, and torts, and she's the director of Metropolitan programs and oversees the award-winning Pre-Law Pipeline program, a program designed to increase the diversity of the law school applicant pool. Her director responsibilities also involve working with the Juvenile and Children's Advocacy Project, a program whose mission it is to reduce juvenile crime and delinquency and improve the long-term educational success rates and life outcomes for socially and economically disadvantaged juveniles. Duncan graduated with a BA in political science from Northwestern and earned her law degree from the University of Houston Law Center. Thank you.
Professor Duncan, I think you're muted.
Yes. Unfortunately, I was the second person not to unmute. I'm sorry about that. Good morning, and thank you for having me here to talk about the University of Houston Law Center's pre-law pipeline programs. I do have slides with me today, so you can just go on and start those slides now. Our goal at the University of Houston with our pre-law pipeline programs is to increase the quality of law school applicants, to increase the quality of the law school applicant pool from untapped markets. We now have been running for approximately 5 years. We started in 2015. We target undergraduate students who are first generation, low income, or members of underrepresented backgrounds in the legal profession. And of course, those who are interested in pursuing a career in the law. Next slide, please. So some of our program successes include that we have 198 program graduates. Several of those have already graduated from their undergraduate institutions. We still have 80 students who are in college. And of those, we have 69 students who have graduated from our pre-law pipeline programs who have been accepted to graduate school. 66 of those have been accepted to law schools across the country. We help our students when they are involved in our pre-law pipeline programs by educating them about scholarship opportunities. And as of this point, our students have been awarded over $2 million in scholarship dollars. We focus a lot on the LSAT scores, especially for the older undergraduate students. And the average point increase on their LSAT is anywhere between 11 to 14 points over the years. Next slide, please. So this is a diagram of the various pipelines that we have to law school. It costs approximately $300,000 to run our pipeline program every year. We receive donations and hold fundraising events in order to fund our programs. You will see that the 3 programs that I'm going to talk to you about today are our Scholar One or Plus program, which is targeted toward rising sophomores or juniors in undergraduate. For rising seniors in undergraduate, we have our Scholar 2 program, which is slightly different. And we also have a pipeline program for students who have been accepted to law school and are in the summer of their first year before law school. Next slide, please. So our first program is for rising sophomores and juniors. Next slide, please. And we call that the Plus program. Our Plus program is an 8-week residential program pre-COVID. If you could advance the slide, please. Yes, it's an 8-week program. Pre-COVID, it was a residential program. So we know that it's very important for our students to reside together for the program. They build bonds together. We allow them to create an atmosphere where they can succeed in the program and focus just on the program itself. The Plus program for the rising sophomores and juniors includes a variety of different components. We offer them introductory law school courses that are taught by law faculty that teach those courses in law school, so they get that real law school life experience. We also provide them with mentorships. We have mentorships for our students, our pipeline students who are both current law students as well as practicing attorneys. We provide professional development programs and training for our pipeline program students. One of the speakers earlier said that one of the goals, and it's one of our goals too, is really just to level the playing field. There are so many things that these students just have not been exposed to and that they don't know about being a lawyer and legal practice. And so as part of their training, we take a very holistic approach and don't just focus on the LSAT, don't just focus on the law school classes, but focus on everything that's involved in their professional development training. We also focus and provide training in legal writing and research because as another panelist said earlier this morning, writing, we can never give them too much writing training. And writing is so very important for their training. And another component of our program, in addition to the law school courses and the professional development training, we also provide legal internships. These are a variety of internships that the students have for approximately 2 weeks or so, 3 weeks. And these internships are all over the greater Houston area and run the gamut of legal practice. So they intern at places like the federal courts, the state courts. They intern at large law firms, small law firms, legal public interest organizations, nonprofits, and the like. So we provide them with exposure to different types of legal practice because we know that a lot of these students just don't know prior to entering this program the wide variety of things that lawyers can do with a legal degree. Next slide, please. This is a long list of the introductory courses that we offer to our PLUS program students. And you can see that it's just it runs the gamut. We try to provide them with a taste of anything that they might be interested in. And like I said previously, these courses are offered by law school faculty who actually teach these in law school. Next slide, please. Our second program is our Scholar 2 program, which is for rising seniors. Next slide, please. And for this particular program, it is also 8 weeks. We like it to be residential. Of course, pre-COVID, it was residential. This past summer, it was virtual. But for the rising seniors, we really focus on comprehensive LSAT preparation. So they take several weeks of LSAT preparatory courses. And in addition to that, we focus on the students developing their law school application by providing them with personal statement workshops, resume workshops. Essentially, by the time that they leave the Scholar 2 program, all they have to do is click the button in order to submit their law school application because they have everything at the end of the program, they have everything they need to apply to law school. We encourage them to take their LSAT courses, or not the LSAT course, but the LSAT test itself early, because the earlier they take the LSAT, the more opportunities they have for earning those scholarship dollars. In addition, we also, for our Scholar 2s, provide that same mentorship opportunities with both law students and practicing lawyers, as well as professional development training. Next slide, please. So our scholar success has been very good. It's been outstanding. As I mentioned earlier, our average LSAT scores increase are typically between 11 and 14 points, which is probably all of you know, it can be life-changing to have such an increase in LSAT scores. And we actually this past summer had one student whose official score increased by almost 20 points. Next slide, please. So after they have been accepted to law school, they know that they're going to law school, we provide another pipeline program, which we refer to as our Bridge Internship program. We partner with other firms in town, and the students have internships at these law firms prior to their first year in law school, where they get very good legal training. They have an opportunity to earn money before attending law school. Next slide, please. And of course, this is 10 weeks long during the summer before their first year in law school. And it's as I said, it's a paid internship. Next slide, please. So we have 66 pre-law pipeline alums who are currently attending law schools, or we've had a few that have actually graduated from law school and have sat for the bar. Next slide, please. And our graduates go on not just to attend the University of Houston Law School. We would all like them to attend just the University of Houston. We'd love to have these outstanding students, but as you can see from the slide that's on your screen now, our graduates attend a wide variety of law schools all across the country. Because as I said previously, our goal is to increase the applicant pool with qualified applicants for all over the country. So we are delighted to answer questions and to talk to you further about our graduates. Next slide, please. And I guess the final slide, this is just a picture of some of our graduates. Next slide, please. Our final slide has information about our pipeline program and what you can do, how you can reach out to us if you have any questions.
Thanks so much, Professor Duncan, and to the University of Houston Law Center for continuing to be a leader in leveling the playing field for diverse students in their professional development training. I was happy to see St. Mary's has taken some of your graduates. Jack?
Wonderful. Got 5 wonderful presentations. So it's now time for questions and answers. So we've got some questions for the panel, and there's instructions on the chat on how to submit questions that can be relayed to us for the panelists. But we wanted to start off first by asking our panelists whether you had any questions or comments for each other. If you heard anything new or interesting or anything that piqued your curiosity. Any questions or comments for others? Michael, I know you said you had things you were going to borrow. What were some of the things you were most excited about borrowing?
Well, I think what I was most excited about was, again, to me, it's all about being holistic. So one of the things, when James O'Neill is talking about how he expanded the view of the pipeline, I think the concept of how to expand your views and how far down you can go. So I'm not sure I, as a law school professor, could reach into high schools. I don't think I would do that well. But the more you think about how far can you reach in either direction, I think the better off a program is.
Wonderful. Other questions, comments for each other?
So I was certainly struck by the observation about how many fundamental similarities there are in our programs, particularly as I was listening to as James was getting started and Bill. There really are some fundamental basics that we have all capitalized on, and the others too, but really an awful lot of similarity, which is why these kinds of conversations, which bring people together, are so essential, because this concept that you have to start your own and go it alone, when there are so many great resources that exist that can really help jumpstart and accelerate what these best practices really are.
And that's related to one of the questions that I had. I wanted to know how big everybody started. You know, did you start off right away with a comprehensive program that served all these students, or did you start really, really small, or somewhere in between?
Well, we were lucky. We had someone that fought for us in the state legislature of Texas. So we started off in 1998 with $500,000 a year, which was certainly a tremendous aid to getting the program started. Over the years, that's pretty much disappeared, though, and we've become more entrepreneurial in grants, trying to get donations. And we've been pretty successful at that. But it allowed us, from the beginning, it gave us the opportunity to be extremely extensive in our operations. So we cover high school. We have a high school program independent of our college program. We try to get them as early as possible. And we have many of our students have been with us in high school, throughout college, and then in the application process, and then off to law school, and then coming back as mentors for our students as well. So because we've been around 22 years, we've developed a long pipeline of students who end up helping each other, and they become a pretty tight-knit group, even though now there are hundreds of them?
For us at Legal Outreach, we actually began very small with a small cohort of literally just 6 students with no funding whatsoever. We just believed that this was an important initiative and that we needed to just jump out there with faith, really, that funding would come as soon as we started to be able to show results. And indeed, that's what happened. We went from 6 students to 10 students, finally got to 20 students, then to 40. Now we're taking upwards of 60 to 70 students per year. But it's definitely been a step-by-step process. If you're going to wait for all the funding to be there, you'd never get it off the ground.
Yeah, in Cleveland, we started each of our programs small as well. And I would say, even though we've been at this in a variety of different capacities, we have added as we have identified new and different needs. So every program is organic and continues to evolve and adapt depending upon what the needs of our population are. Currently, right now, for example, while our summer college program, the Stokes Scholars Program, has been in existence since 2012, 3 years ago, we saw a significant challenge related to LSAT preparation. So we've built out an LSAT boot camp, and now this year we're specifically fundraising to support an endowed fund that will ensure resources are available specific to LSAT. We wouldn't have known that but for getting a couple of years under our belt and really seeing where some of the challenges were.
So go on, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say at University of Houston, we also started small and just started with the younger undergraduate students, and we've added as the years have gone on for the past 5 years. We now have a program for working professionals, people who are out in the workforce but are interested in going to law school. So we noticed that as identified that as a need, and so we have a pipeline for that as well. So we started small and added it on over the years.
So I tell people we started both small and naive and incredibly unsuccessful until we realized what it took to succeed. The number of initial students hasn't changed. Obviously, the number we're responsible for changes as the pipeline continues. But Dean Baines and I have had this ongoing disagreement, and as so often is the case, he's right and I'm wrong. I say you shouldn't do a program unless you're committed to go big or go home. And he says we all start small. So I've decided after thinking about that, he's right, but you start small, but know how much it's going to take. You can't just have a scholarship and announce a conference and think you've won. It has to be work. It's really labor intensive. So you learn you can start small, but expect to expand what you need to do if you really care about succeeding.
That's really good advice from everyone. And I'm going to go to the audience questions now. We had one question about LSAT preparation, and you all have indicated how very critical the LSAT preparation is to these programs. But I did want to put in a plug for the Khan Academy LSAT preparation program that's available free through LSAC, one of the sponsors of this program and the University of Houston's pipeline program. So if you're students out there and you're thinking about preparing, that is something that's helping to level the playing field, is that free LSAT prep on LSAC through Khan Academy. So for Mr. O'Neill, there were 2 questions specific to you. One is, how are students chosen, and how much do the summer law institutes cost?
So our process for choosing students begins with Legal Outreach actually identifying middle schools in underserved communities. And we make contact with those middle schools. We ask permission from the principal or the guidance counselor to come in and do a law-related presentation, not a lecture, but an actual case where kids get excited about what they've just done. At the end of that process, we just literally say to them, if you enjoyed that, we invite you to apply to a program that will take place over the summer and that will actually be held at a law school. So that prospect for a lot of kids is really exciting. We probably get 3 to 4 times as the number of applicants than positions that we have available. And we go through a process then of interviewing the kids as a group. We have some group activities. Then we also have individual interviews of the students as well as their parents. And that's how we get down to the final number. And the second part of that question, was there a second part?
The cost of the law institutes.
Yeah, so the cost of the institutes varied. So the total cost of doing the institutes at each of the 6 schools, or the 6 schools combined, is actually around $300,000, because that involves not just the institute itself, but the recruitment period. So that takes staff time to do that. And then we don't just do the institute, we choose law students, we recruit law students, and we actually take them through a 4-week training process before they actually start to teach at each of the institutes. And then even after the 5-week institutes are over, there's a week of evaluation of the students themselves. So probably about $50,000 for each institute.
All right, here is another question from the audience. What are the principal reasons why students don't make it through the pipeline program? Really for anyone who has that program.
So listen, just from my observations over the years, I've found that there are lots and lots of students who want to make it, who have a desire to make it. But what I've also found is that for many students, especially those who have been subject to an inferior education through the public school system, they just don't have the skills nor the discipline that's actually needed, right? And so that's why supplemental programs are really needed. You can't just say to them, listen, we're going to expose you, we want to get you excited, and then from there, you're on your own, right? And we discovered that and decided that we would try to fill that gap. And as you heard in my presentation, we've successfully done it. So, but it's about getting students excited about the process, but then providing them with the additional academic support that they're going to need in order to realize their dreams.
I think you could also talk about sort of the psychological thing when you are a first gen, when you are surrounded by people who don't have your dreams, that to convince people that their dreams are real and they can achieve them. So again, I use the phrase toxic voices. Someone has to answer those voices. And I'll tell you, and this ties into the line about discipline you just heard. They don't believe, so many of my students, that something can be both hard and doable. So in other words, they've succeeded. At the HBCUs, they've already won so many battles, and they're not used to a really hard academic battle. And that's when you realize that their egos are more fragile than they let on. So you have to teach them both that discipline, and that I tell them that failure is only when you give up. Otherwise, it's just a setback. And so the psychological support, as well as navigating through financial and emotional stuff as well. So it's not just the academic, but I want to stress the discipline. They've succeeded without academic discipline because they're smart and ambitious. You got to teach them to be disciplined as well.
Let me echo that from Michael, because part of what we found, one of the secrets to our success is that we're getting these kids coming from different environments, different communities, where they may be the only ones who are actually striving to do something like this. But when they come together, they become a supportive community, right? And it makes such a difference in their willingness to hang on and their willingness to kind of give it their all. So it becomes that becomes really one of the keys to keeping kids on the track, especially when you have a program that goes longer than a semester or even a year.
I would love to underscore the psychological piece of the students coming together to support one another. One of the things that we launched was we do an alumni party every holiday at the end of the year when students are home from college or out of law school on break. We invite them to come back to get together, and what starts out as a 1-hour luncheon inevitably turns into a 6-hour gathering long after the staff have gone, long after the volunteers have gone, that is just about the students talking to each other and working through the challenges that they have experienced. And the most exciting piece now is that we've got enough history here that we have some practicing lawyers who have become the mentors and who have become the big brothers and sisters who have taken the current generation under their wings. And what they get from each other far surpasses anything that we could give them from the legal community, from the bar staff. They're finding their similarities, they're finding their resiliency, and they're finding their own confidence by seeing those that have gone before and by sharing what those challenges are to take away the isolation.
That's great. Do others want to weigh in on this question?
We're getting a lot of great questions through the chat, and so I'll move on to another one. One of the questions I'm just going to answer for you all, and it's how do our law schools reach out to your pipeline students to encourage them to consider us? Well, I'm pretty confident that any law school could reach out to any of these participants, as well as any of the law schools that are in Texas, all 10 of us, because I know we're all interested in doing this and helping to improve the profession in this way. Are there programs for minority students postgraduate?
So I'll jump in and say through our bar association, absolutely. Once we get you, we never let you go. Cradle to grave, we are engaged in providing opportunities. And so both specific to lawyers of color, through a variety of different targeted programming and sort of section and committee engagement. And then I would also say by practice area and subject area. Again, that concept of finding your footing is essential, and finding people like you who can help you think through and work through your challenges at every stage of the career are essential. And so in the bar association world, as I'm sure happens in Texas, we have lots of offerings that continue.
Well, and I think for those who are post-grad to reach out to bar associations in their area that may have programs or may want to start programs or might have mentorship opportunities, and the affinity bars, those bars that are made up of Black lawyers already, for instance, can be helpful. Okay, let's see. What efforts are needed institutionally to change a system that continues to prop up barriers?
I would just start with the idea that you can start small. Structural racism is not defeated unless you have everyone changing. Because what happens is law firms can say, well, you don't have enough Black lawyers, and law schools can say, well, look, they're not doing well in the LSAT. Everyone has to do their part. I mean, I think number one is I've learned in my life, I go micro rather than macro. And what we need is every law firm and every law school to go micro, and everyone does their part. And that's how you begin to build something that can then knock down the largest barriers.
I agree with that. I would just add that we have to be deliberate. You know, increasing diversity in the legal profession, increasing diversity at law schools is not something that just happens because we notice that there, 5% of the practicing lawyers, only 5% are Black. Awareness is important, but we have to be very deliberate in our steps towards making that change.
I'm going to say probably be controversial, but I think that the LSAT operates as a color bar to admission, and it disproportionately works against minorities. And I'm not sure that there is a rock solid connection between LSAT score and performance in law school. What I would like to see as a reform would be that the ABA allow law schools to set aside some percentage of their law school classes where they can make admits without an LSAT score. That would give them some flexibility, maybe 20%. And it's based on a whole record review of what they've accomplished in life, how they've done in school, the writing skills, personal interviews that might undertake, but give law schools the flexibility to increase diversity in their classes through something that is not as sterile as the LSAT, right? Which is an examination that I think most of us would believe is unfortunate in some ways and is a great tool in other ways. But I think that there should be an option for law schools to admit some portion of their class without an LSAT, and that they're not penalized by the ABA rules and by the profession.
And currently, we're permitted to do that just as it relates to the undergraduates at our particular institution. So another program that we have at U of H that just started up is that undergraduate University of Houston students who have a very high GPA can be admitted to we can accept them to the University of Houston Law Center without them having to take the LSAT.
That's great.
So in the workforce arena, I would say that one of the obstacles that I see right now that's happening is a newer trend, which is and I'll focus on law firms just for a moment, is there is great acceptance among about the critical importance of creating genuine inclusion opportunities that will drive true diversity. But one of the trends now is it's become a competitive marketing opportunity. And so organizations are using this as a flag to show to clients, look what we're doing. And we're doing it on our own and we're leading. This is not a go it alone challenge that is to be solved. This is something for true systemic, long-term, permanent change to happen. It takes all of us working together. And so one of the things that I preach here, that I'm continuing to preach, and I know I see it elsewhere, is we should really work on this together, because what is good for one firm doesn't necessarily help a community, but what helps a community will help a single organization.
The LSAT has been mentioned, and one of the questions from the audience is whether the emphasis on the LSAT is misplaced or detrimental. Bill's already said something about that. Do folks have thoughts on the LSAT?
It's sort of a mixed bag in the sense that I agree it's culturally biased, as I've said. On the other hand, I think, to go back to the idea of discipline, there is something to be said for some barrier, artificial or otherwise, that forces students to work harder than they want to. I agree. I don't think the LSAT is necessarily the right approach. I think there are many ways to think about it, but I do think that until we change the world, I don't mind my students sort of learning to do that. I do think, as we talk about structural change, to get US News to not be terrorizing deans. There is something unbelievable about most law schools not having a financial need scholarships, and they're all merit-based because we're all buying LSAT scores. That, to me, is as sad and as evil a consequence as I can think of.
And for now, the LSAT is a necessary evil. So until, perhaps things should change. But in the meantime, especially when we're talking about minority students, Black students getting into law school, we need to help them attack the LSAT. And one of the things that we really do here with our pipeline programs is when we are looking to hire LSAT instructors, we talk to them first very seriously about their feelings about minority students, about working with minority students, about working with people who may look different from them, or who may have come from different backgrounds, or whose lives look different, because all of those things are very, very important when working with the target demographic that we are talking about today. So the LSAT, yes, it has issues, but for now we need to work on how best to prepare our students to do well on the LSAT, because it is a gateway to law school.
Okay, one of the viewers suggested that if we don't know about advancement via individual determination, AVID, a nonprofit that trains 85,000 educators annually to close the opportunity gap so they can prepare all students for college, careers, and life, that we might want to check into that as we're working on improving the pipeline programs we have. What is one thing that the ABA and the AALS can do to increase the success of pipeline programs?
I'll make no friends, mandate them. Let's have every law school required to explain what they are doing, and to do it with vigor, and do it until they succeed. I think it is a commitment that every law school should be having. We have enough law schools doing it now. We know it can work. I will tell you, money is really nice. I'd love to have a whole lot more, but it's as much people power as anything else. And I think there should be a commitment. I think, go back, US News should count diversity as part of their measure of excellence. But I think the ABA and AALS should demand concrete, successful programs at every single law school.
Yeah, I would actually agree with that. I think one of the problems that we face in with law schools is how they approach things, right? So most law schools, I mean, these are different times, and money tends to become an issue, right? And so when the question is, what are going to be your priorities? And it's really easy, I think, for diversity to be placed on the back burner. And even if you do diversity, you're going to do something at your school, as opposed to going back and asking yourself the question, how can we support a college program of some sort? How can we support a high school program? And I think one of the keys is trying to build a true pipeline. Right now, we don't have one, right? I mean, we have these little parts of a pipe that are working independently of each other, such that there's not a true pipeline that goes from high school to college and then into law school. And to do that, law schools have to look beyond whether it's going to be individually helpful to them and think more about, is this going to be helpful to the profession as a whole?
I agree with all of that and would add or emphasize, money. These programs take money to run. So for better or for worse, we always need support in terms of funding.
Let me ask the panelists this, as you constructed your programs, operating your programs, has there been anything you found that was surprising or counterintuitive? Did you change, even dramatically change your approach? Could you share that with the audience?
Yeah, I can share with you that when I first started this 37 years ago, I was actually had the opportunity to teach at a high school. And my very first question to my students on the very first day was, and this was to a law elective class, was, so how many of you all want to be lawyers? And not a single solitary person raised his or her hand. And it shocked me because I came in with this thought that everybody wanted to achieve their American dream, which meant you wanted to be a doctor, lawyer, businessman, engineer, whatever. And it's not the case. If you're not exposed to the possibilities at an early age, if you're not seeing people in your community who occupy those types of positions, it's really hard for young people of color to believe that that is something that they can achieve. And so they start to lower their sights as to what is achievable. And I'll never forget, one young student said that his desire, and this shocked me, was to be a sanitation man. Now, we've all heard about little kids wanting to be police officers and firemen and so forth, but to be a sanitation worker, not that there's anything wrong with that, but the reason he wanted to become a sanitation worker is because he had an older brother who was employed by the Department of Sanitation, and he got paid well and had good benefits. And so people want to do what they see, but if they've never been given the opportunity to be exposed, then their wishes and desires are going to be much more limited.
If I could say two things I learned, and I learned, like, the entire program is really learned by doing. But number one is the fact of confidence and how easily it's shattered. And especially if you haven't been in a world that welcomes you. So learning to deal with that. Secondly, I think the favorite thing I learned was I was talking to one group one year, and I said, what I always said is, what should I tell next year's group? And a student looked at me and said, tell them we're not all the same. And so we've been talking a lot about groups, and you have to, at the same time, every group is made up of individuals, individual needs, individual stories. And that, I think, has stuck with me more than anything else.
Michael, that's exactly where I was going to go, which is we do talk about groups and we talk about numbers in the aggregate, but it doesn't take a ton to change one student's life. And we've seen it again and again in every one of our programs. The power of one is, and it doesn't take years of programming. It can take one conversation. It can take one interaction with one kid one time that can be transformative. Are there other needs? Of course. But it can be just the power of one to change somebody's life.
Yeah, and I just want to echo all of that. I've learned all of that as well. As it's not just about the LSAT. I think that was one of my biggest surprises, that these students need to learn As Mr. O'Neill was saying, what lawyers do. They have no idea that lawyers are everywhere. They're walking around amongst us. You just don't know they're lawyers, you know? So they need to know what lawyers do, that they're politicians and in-house counsel and advisors. And in addition to that, as I said, it's not just about the LSAT. It really requires a holistic approach, including one of the things that we do is focus on mental health. They need, and that's related, I think, to what Professor Meyerson was saying, that we need to take a holistic approach to their care and how they can take care of themselves, and how there's a lot of different parts that go into being a successful lawyer and being a successful law student.
That's those are some great points that you all have made, and we are about to wrap up. So I'm just going to say, on behalf of Dean Nowlin and the panelists, we thank you so much for watching. There's 663 participants right now. You know, if we all look at the power of one right there, we could increase the number of minority students headed on the way to law school and into the profession 663 times. One thing that I want to encourage anybody who's watching who wants to be a lawyer or wants to go to law school, reach out to the panelists or any of the law schools, deans, and just law school admissions offices of the law schools who are featured here and taking part in the conference. And for those who want to start programs like this, modestly or not, please, law firms, bar associations, and law schools, nonprofits, reach out to the panelists. I thank all of you for your inspirational programs. I learned so much. I know my colleagues across the country did as well. There were some consistent themes. We have to start early, start with students who are younger than we might think traditionally. We need a holistic approach in the services offered and the supports, and that support has to be consistent and contact maintained throughout the process. These are all efforts that are critical if we want the bench and bar to become more reflective of our nation's population. And I know that all of us here today want exactly that. So thank you all. The next panel is the role of historically Black law schools.